Just outside Kansas City, Missouri, there's a house that looks like your average suburban home on the outside. But inside, that's a different story.
Hey, my name is Andrew Olson, and we're looking at my Barney collection today. So, yeah.
Andrew is a self-described Barney historian and preservationist.
I actually own the world's largest Barney collection.
Okay, there might be some other Barney collectors out there who would dispute this, but the point is, Andrew owns a lot of Barney memorabilia. Andrew is in his late 20s, and he's kind of famous among Barney fans. He co-founded the Barney History Fans Facebook group and website.
So I live in a 4-bedroom house. 3 of my bedrooms are occupied by Barney, and then I get one. So we're standing in I call it my museum room, and it has my more rare Barney items, more valuable Barney items.
Andrew's collection includes plush toys. So many plush toys.
So this is Handyman Barney. This Barney, he's wearing overalls and a hat, and has a little tool bag.
He also has Barney puzzles, books, quilts, signs, photos, hats, props, scripts, a snow globe, a banjo, and even a self-playing piano of Barney music. On the day of our tour, Andrew's living room is packed with Barney items. Like, there's an entire pyramid of Barney merch, including a 4-foot-tall Barney doll.
Normally, it doesn't look like this. Normally, all this stuff kind of lives in boxes in my storage room, but I got it all out to show you guys today. Over 1,400 items.
Oh, boy.
Andrew loved Barney as a kid, and then, like a lot of us, he grew out of him. But during the COVID-19 pandemic, Andrew started getting panic attacks that brought him to the emergency room a few times.
I remember getting home from the hospital one night, and I was sitting in my house trying to figure out what was going on, what was different, how can I get a hold of myself and my emotions and bring myself back and ground myself here. And the song I Love You just like popped in my head out of nowhere.
For Andrew, this song became a source of comfort during a really difficult time. It was like a warm hug from a friend.
In the Barney theme song, there's this lyric where it goes, "Barney comes to play with us whenever we may need him." And I feel like he came back into my life at the exact moment that I needed him most, even though I didn't know I needed him.
Like many of us, Andrew needed a sense of community at a time when we were all social distancing. So he joined the online Barney fandom, began researching the show's history, and started his collection. He immersed himself in the Barneyverse, and that made him feel like part of something bigger. Andrew sees his Barney collection as a bit of a calling.
Barney did so much for me in my childhood and millions of children across the world, and it's my way of ensuring the character lives on into the future and that he isn't forgotten, he isn't lost, and that the integrity of the franchise continues.
Andrew's goal is to donate or loan the collection to a museum, or to create his own exhibit one day.
I feel like I've been put in a unique position to be able to preserve a lot of this stuff, and I want to make sure that I can, do that, do justice to history preservation and making sure these things live on for generations to come.
From Connecticut Public, I'm Sabrina Herrera. This is Generation Barney, a podcast about the media we loved as kids and how it shapes us. On Barney and Friends, Barney starts off as a plush toy and then comes to life. That iconic stuffed animal wasn't just on the small screen. It was in the homes of children around the world. Barney fans like me had plush toys, but also sneakers, sippy cups, bed sheets, and so much more. That merchandise was a huge part of the show's success. But Barney and Friends wasn't the first movie or TV show to connect with fans through merch. That dates back a long time and has a history that includes He-Man, Ronald Reagan, and George Lucas. Episode 4, Purple Capitalism. When Barney first launched, in its home video era, Andrew Olson says there weren't any toys to go along with the program.
Actually, when they originally started Barney, they couldn't find anyone to make plush dolls for them because no one knew who Barney was back in the 80s. And the reason they started making Barney plushes is because they got letters from parents saying their child was sleeping with a video box and if they could make something a little more soft. And so they approached a couple companies to try to license Barney. No one wanted to because no one knew who Barney was.
Eventually, a toy company called Dakin agreed. So the creators of Barney had Dakin make some Barney plush toys, and it paid off.
They made a lot of money off Barney dolls. There was over, I think we're at a figure, 25 million Barney plushes produced just in the 90s alone.
Barney plushes were big money, just like Cabbage Patch Kids and Barbie before them. But kids have been playing with toys long before all of those popped up on our TV screens or in our holiday catalogs. The commercial toy market as we know it really got started in the 17th century. That's when accessories were sold along with books.
A ball or a pincushion, depending on if it was a boy or a girl.
Meredith Bogg is a literal toy expert and teaches childhood studies at Rutgers University, Camden.
And the idea is that you would read these kind of moralistic stories and then sort of enact the lessons with the accompanying toy.
In the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution allowed for the production of toys on a way bigger scale than ever before.
And I've looked at a lot of paper craft toys from this time that, you could cut out and fold together.
Fast forward to today, the toy industry and the number of products made to sell to children have reached new heights, especially with licensed merch that goes along with TV shows and movies. Meredith says that this has changed the way that toy companies think about developing new products.
So, not only just like licensed merchandise and the film, but really kind of a network where you're getting bits and pieces of meaning from each one of those products separately. Even to the point where, sometimes they'll describe the launch of a new toy line as like a content initiative rather than, a new toy.
So, how did we get to this point? To answer that question, we have to first visit a galaxy far, far away. Star Wars had a massive impact on the role of toys and merch in pop culture when it hit the big screen in 1977. But creator George Lucas actually had a hard time getting the movie made.
It's the most popular science fiction franchise, arguably, the most successful. But originally, when he took the idea to several studios, they saw it as a very expensive project.
Lincoln Garrity is a huge Star Wars fan.
When I was a kid growing up, I can remember my mum making birthday cakes in the shape of Chewbacca, buying all the toys. I could say absolutely, I've lived and breathed Star Wars for most of my life.
He also teaches media cultures at the University of Portsmouth. And Lincoln says from the very beginning, George Lucas saw merch as a key piece of the Star Wars franchise.
He saw the potential for this sort of second bite of the world, make it physical. And certainly people say that he was the first to make merchandising almost more important than the movie.
Lincoln says Lucas actually changed the way merch was produced in Hollywood.
He famously said, well, I'll keep a slice of the merchandising pie. You invest in the movie. 20th Century Fox did agree.
For Lucas, toys weren't an afterthought, but essential for engaging audiences with the Star Wars universe. And his idea worked. The company that produced the Star Wars toys sold out so fast, it had to offer an IOU certificate for Christmas one year. It was basically a letter that someone could mail in to get a box of Star Wars action figures once they were available. The company didn't have enough to meet the initial demand. And these action figures had a big impact well beyond the success of Star Wars.
In the 80s, other growing franchises, new and old franchises, saw that the success that George Lucas had with merchandise, that they would follow suit. So in a sense, it did create this almost avalanche of, well, you've got a big movie, you've got to have the associated action figures, regardless of what type of movie it was.
And if that's not enough, Lucas also changed the way that toys were designed.
Prior to this point, if you bought any kind of figurine, it was usually about 12 inches in height. So think of a Barbie doll, right? They're pretty big.
That's Selma Porach. She studies children and consumerism at Western University in Ontario.
Star Wars takes these figures and they completely shrink them. They take them down to 3 3/4 inches in height.
Making figures smaller meant that you could buy the Millennium Falcon and figures that would actually fit inside of it.
So when children start playing with these Star Wars toys, they're inevitably going to play the film. So these changes in terms of Star Wars, both sort of showing toy manufacturers that there's a real benefit in producing programming. This is a film that really emphasizes the link between toys and entertainment media.
A link that only got stronger from there. Soon after the Star Wars release, there was a change in the way children's TV programs were regulated. You've probably heard of the FCC, or the Federal Communications Commission. It's a government agency, and it basically oversees what you see and hear on the radio and TV. And Selma says before the 1980s, the FCC was more strict about the type and amount of ads that played on a kids' show. Take the example of Hot Wheels, a 1960s cartoon about mini toy cars.
The FCC intervened. They said this wasn't a cartoon. This was basically an advertisement. They said any time that the Hot Wheels logo appeared, that was an ad. The opening theme was a jingle.
Selma says the FCC investigated complaints about the show.
They said you could only play the program if you got rid of the logo and you got rid of the opening theme, which of course you can't do. So the TV show ended up being canceled. So this sort of shows you that there's a system in place that regulates advertising content to children.
But this all changed under President Ronald Reagan.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Reagan appointed a new commissioner to the FCC in the 1980s.
And what happens as a result is all of those rules and regulations, they're gone. By 1984, all of them are gone.
And in this new landscape, a new kind of advertising directed at kids ramped up, something called a program-length commercial, or PLC.
So this is exactly what the phrase implies. It is a commercial that rather than being 1 minute long, it is actually the length of an entire program. It's an advertisement in disguise.
So instead of making a show and then making toys along with it, a PLC does it the other way around.
So you're basically wrapping a storyline around a product. All of the popular cartoons that come out of the 1980s, all of those classics, they're PLCs. He-Man, G.I. Joe, Strawberry Shortcake, The Care Bears, My Little Pony.
Yeah, all of those properties were essentially ads. They were designed to sell toys. Take He-Man, for example.
Come on, Battle Cat. An Eternian snail can move faster than this.
One of my brothers was really into He-Man, and so I totally got into it too. I thought She-Ra was like the greatest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
The company Mattel toyed with the idea of developing a comic to sell its He-Man action figure. But with comics, kids need to be able to read, and so you missed out on some of those potential consumers.
As a result, they end up going to Filmation, an animation studio, and they're initially interested in developing 2 one-hour specials that are designed to sell the toy. But it turns out that a syndicated series is pretty much the same price.
A TV show gave them much more bang for their buck.
So what you see in the history of He-Man is that we have a pre-existing toy, and the only reason they've created the TV show is in order to sell that toy.
Selma says that these shows appealed to a generation of kids known as latchkey kids. They'd let themselves into the house because their parents were at work.
They're at home alone, they're wishing they had a stronger connection to their parents, but they're kind of forced to fend for themselves.
And Selma says these shows and then the toys associated with them let these kids drift into a fantasy, just like He-Man.
And the masters of the universe.
But when he raises his sword and he says, "I have the power," he becomes He-Man, and his cowardly cat becomes Battle Cat. I mean, this is a perfect fantasy for a lonely Gen X latchkey kid. It's a fantasy of mastery.
Lincoln Garrity, the Star Wars fan and toy expert, says this approach to creating a TV show basically gave these companies an extra opportunity for success. If the show didn't succeed, they had the toy, and vice versa.
If the merchandise hits well and people want to buy it and have it, then they will constantly come back to the show.
At least, that's what happened with Barney and Friends. That's after the break. Hi, I'm Sabrina Herrera. Generation Barney is sponsored by Masterclass. For a gift that's always on time and lasts a lifetime, you can't do better than Masterclass. You'll find lessons from over 200 instructors. Learn with best-selling author David Sedaris or world-renowned cellist Yo-Yo Ma. With Masterclass, your loved ones can learn from the best to become their best. Masterclass always has great offers during the holidays, sometimes up to as much as 50% off. Head over to masterclass.com/dino for the current offer. That's up to 50% off at masterclass.com/dino. masterclass.com/dino. Barney came onto our TV screens in the early 1990s into this post-program-length commercial, post-Star Wars world. Now, Barney and Friends was not made specifically to sell toys like He-Man was. It started as an indie home video series. But Barney toys ended up becoming a big part of the show's brand. Some of those plush toys now live in the office of Jess Nelson.
Well, looking around my office, I've got a Barney with a ski sweater on. I got a Chef Barney plush. These are both plushes. The Chef Barney dances and sings. He vibrates when he gets on the floor.
Jess was production designer for Barney and Friends.
Then I've got the original Barney plush stunt double from the show.
Wait, not the stuffed dino that sprang into life as Barney at the start of the show, having a stunt double. Jess got hired on the show in 1991. At the time, he was deciding whether to take the Barney gig or work on a big Hollywood movie.
I could do that for about 6 weeks, or here's 3 children's videos that would keep me busy for about 3 months. So I decided to go with the money.
Plus, he says it sounded like fun.
Most of the stuff I'd been doing was, pretty generic talking head show sets and things like that. So this was exciting.
Jess says he wore a bunch of hats in his production work with Barney. He created sets for the show.
Like building Santa's workshop, making miniatures of his workshop so they could fly over it and, shoot it and stuff like that. Fun stuff. And some special effects stuff too.
He even designed food props.
Ice cream doesn't go well in hot studio lights. It kind of disappears. So I had to come up with a fake ice cream that looked tasty, juicy, wonderful dessert.
They ended up using Play-Doh, by the way. And Jess helped redesign the Barney costume.
There were a few costumes prior to my time. The very first one was so bluish purple that when they videoed the first 3 videos, he turned out to be blue. And everybody nicknamed the big blue dog because the purple didn't show up.
Oh, so this is why Barney seemed to change colors.
Now, later on, when I first started, they had a rubberish costume made out of foam, the big walk-around rubber Barney, and they would dye him, and there would be dye all over everything because they'd have to keep touching up the foam. And he turned out to be a pretty good color to video, but not practical to have around children in costumes and wardrobe and everything like that because he smeared everywhere. So it was an experiment to come up with the right color.
Jess even appeared on Barney and Friends a few times.
I did a squirrel in a tree, Stella the storyteller's fish that popped out of the suitcase. That was me.
I remember that. Jess also redesigned the Barney plush doll filmed in the show for the 1992 PBS launch, the one that comes to life at the start of each episode. He says they only built a few of them at the time.
One of them became the hero show doll. The other one was the standby rehearsal doll I called the stunt double. And the third one went right to Cheryl Leach.
Yes, the Cheryl Leach, the creator of Barney.
And she sent it to the toy companies, and she said, I want you to give me back samples and prototypes of this doll. This is what we want as a doll. So send me your prototypes and give me your prices.
Since Barney started as an independent show before it went to PBS, fan and collector Andrew Olson says it didn't have to go through as much red tape as other nonprofit shows like Sesame Street.
And so I think they had a little more freedom to market directly to kids, to pump out more product and merchandise.
The creators of Barney even collaborated with the department store Neiman Marcus to produce pop-up Barney boutiques within their stores, selling Barney clothes, watches, and of course, plush dolls.
That in turn drew kids back into the show because if they have, 5 Barney pajamas, 2 Barney plush dolls, Barney toothbrush, whatnot, of course they're going to be Barney fans.
Selma Porach, the children and consumerism scholar, says that merchandise put Barney in the ranks of huge stars at the time.
So in '94, the top earning entertainers were in order: Steven Spielberg, Oprah Winfrey, and Barney.
I never thought I'd hear those 3 in the same sentence. Honestly, iconic. For kids everywhere, the Barney plush was more than just a toy. It meant having a piece of the show. Remember, Barney starts each episode as a stuffed animal and then comes to life.
Oh, hi there. I'm so glad to see you.
So maybe, just maybe, if, like Andrew, you had the Barney toy at home, it would happen for you.
There's this scene in the Barney movie where a kid puts a Barney plush doll in the shower and closes it, and Barney comes to life. And so I used to get my Barney plush doll, put him in the shower, and hope that he would come to life.
At a certain point, Barney was everywhere, in kitchens and bathrooms and bedrooms of Barney fans around the world. Our home was no exception.
What kind of Barney merch and merchandise did we have?
My mom, Liliana Herrera, was probably as big of a Barney fan as I was growing up.
Oh my goodness. We have bowls, straws, spoons. We have movies, books. Oh my God, tons of books. We have the pajamas, the t-shirts, even the sneakers.
When Barney and Friends came on TV, my mom says I used to run around our apartment, put on my Barney sneakers, and hold on to as many plushes as I could. It brought me closer to him, made Barney more real. It's no wonder I believed my mom when she told me Barney magic could help when I cracked the straw in my favorite sippy cup.
And I said, oh, maybe Barney can fix it with his gizmos and gadgets, Barney bag. And then, of course, you didn't see me, but I cut the little piece that was bag. And I said, oh, Barney fixed it. And that was it. You were extra happy, and then you were jumping up and down. So children were not only watching it, but at home they have a piece.
Lincoln Garrity says this makes perfect sense.
For the kid, Barney could come alive and interact with him or her. That connection with the physical object, even as a small child, is along those lines of immersion, make-believe. It makes the sort of TV series much more real because you can have it, hold it, hug it, put it on your pillow at night.
Lincoln says that for kids, the toys they treasure become a sort of totem.
And we all know that growing up and getting older is a challenge, it's a journey, and sometimes you need those sort of objects, those transitional objects to take with you into different parts and periods of your life. And Barney, as literally a toy that comes to life, certainly fits that model.
That idea of toys coming to life, that blew up with the Toy Story movie in the mid-90s. But it goes back to at least 1922 with the story of the Velveteen Rabbit.
This sort of friendly, plush, soft toy rabbit, much loved as the young child grows up. It's his imaginary friend, it's his companion in growing up. But then, when you grow out of playing with toys and stuffed dolls, he gets put away in the box, maybe tucked under the bed or on the back of the wardrobe.
Think about your favorite blanket, stuffed animal, or doll. If you could hold it again, what would it feel like?
Going to clean out the wardrobe, you re-encounter that toy. It's dusty, it's maybe a bit of mold on it. But in the mind of the original owner, the kid that's come back to it as an adult, it feels the same. It brings back all those emotions, those sort of memories of childhood. And so in the eyes of the child, it looks brand new. He can't see, or they can't see, the age of the toy.
These objects can transport us through time and space, back to who we were when we first held them. That's something the kids in our lives today might also experience decades from now. Since Barney's peak in the 90s, merchandise has become an even bigger part of children's television, for connecting kids with a program, but also for the financial success of a series. Some go as far as to call merch an expectation today.
It used to be that if you were able to have a successful show and you got some merchandising out of it, that was a win.
Sherry Holt Culver is a children's media expert based at Temple University in Philadelphia. You met her back in the first episode.
Now, the view of what makes a successful show is this 360 universe. You've got a video game, you've got a book, maybe from the TV show itself, you've got some, stuffed animals or some other stuffed and merchandising.
After all, when kids like something, they want to see it everywhere.
They want to live in it, like literally live in it. They want to have a coat that's got the character on it, sneakers with the character on it, backpack with the character on it. They want to watch it, see it, read about it, all of that. So it does play into the way kids connect and those experiences they can have. But it also, it really speaks to the money aspect of the industry.
Sherry used to work in public television. In the late 90s, she went to a conference with a lot of other TV executives and producers. And at that conference, there was a new kids show on TV. It was the Teletubbies. Those colorful characters with antennas sticking out of their heads and TVs on their stomachs. What were they even? Anyway, the creators of Teletubbies were offering a bag of stuffed Teletubby toys.
The adults were clamoring for these bags because they knew that if they brought them home, that they had kids or cousins or, nieces and nephews who would love them. But the energy around everybody getting these things and holding these Teletubbies in their arms, I will never forget the look on everybody's face. And I was like, this is a gold mine for Teletubbies. The feeling that people have about having these products will help that show.
Because when it comes down to it, children's television is an industry. They need to sell merchandise if they want to be successful. And it's not just toys. For children's media, or really any media today, there's potential for all sorts of merchandising and branding. Here's kids consumerism expert Selma Porach again.
So for instance, Disney is a well-established brand name, but nowadays you can buy Disney apples. So they've slapped that brand onto a new product category, which is fresh fruit. Paw Patrol, you can buy yogurt. You can buy backpacks. You can buy fruit roll-ups.
This whole universe around a brand has a huge impact.
So what this means is if you can get a kid to be a fan of a single show, you are potentially creating a consumer worth thousands upon thousands of dollars through all of these offshoot products associated with that singular show.
Parents and their kids see toys everywhere, in stores, on social media, at school, and at their friends' houses.
I mean, how do you escape that?
You really can't escape it. And it ends up creating millions of mini consumers. Yeah, kids are consumers. And Selma says treating them that way isn't without consequences.
Increased consumption is often aligned with increased dissatisfaction. So we're sort of creating a culture that is easily manipulated by marketers, a culture that is constantly wanting more and more, but in an economy that cannot support that way of thinking. So we're kind of, creating a generation, a future generation of dissatisfied individuals.
And the things we learn about buying and wanting as kids follow us well into adulthood. That's according to children's media expert Sherry Hope Culver.
So the value of connecting a child to a brand at a young age has incredible monetary value to that brand for the duration of that child's life.
Think about the toothpaste or laundry detergent you use. Sherry says you're probably buying the same brand that your family did.
Because it will always be a touchstone to family, to childhood. You're just connected to it forever.
A forever customer. What a lot of us are today. In October, Mattel, which now owns the Barney property, released its animated Barney reboot, Barney's World. And with the new show came a whole lot of new Barney merch. Not just toys and items for kids, but also retro items for us adults who grew up with the original Barney. For those forever customers. So yes, merchandise helps TV shows make money. But it also connects us to these shows and movies that we love, and the other fans who love them too. For Jess Nelson, the Barney production designer, merch also helped connect him to kids who watched the show.
One day I got an email from the Barney voice, Bob West, the original Barney voice. And he said, Jess, he says, you know what you should do? He says, you need to talk to the fans. Fans want to hear about you.
Inspired by that call, Jess started the Barney Plush Fans group on Facebook in 2021. It now has about 6,000 members who post photos of their Barney merch.
Having the fans send me in pictures of their Barneys and their stories about how they loved Barney, how they grew up with Barney, how many Barneys they had, and people started just flooding the thing with, oh, here's my collection, and I was just amazed at how many Barney dinos and the dino friends could be collected, and then all the paraphernalia and all the products and everything. And it really dawned on me that Barney was big.
Jess's group has been a meeting place for fans like Barney collector Andrew Olson.
From there, I started to just gradually get more and more involved. I gained a lot of friends through the fandom, and I found myself kind of a full-force member of the Barney fan community.
Merch is absolutely used to make money, but it also connects people to a character, a new world, and to each other. And these connections, they can stick with you for life. Sometimes the media we loved as kids can lead to our future careers.
All of those ages, Barney stayed with me as a driving force of, okay, these are my goals in life. This is what I want to do after high school. This is where I'm headed.
I do this at home. I take my own toys and I make them talk and I have them tell stories. Why not get paid to do that? That sounds awesome.
And even help us find our best friends.
Can you believe we're here? And can you believe this friend group started because of a purple dinosaur?
That's next time on Generation Barney. This episode was reported, written, and produced by Meg Dalton and Lily Tyson. It was edited by Cassandra Basler. Sound design and mixing by Jay Cowett. Jay also composed the podcast's theme. Additional music in this episode from APM. Megan Fitzgerald is our project manager. Additional editing help from Katie Chilarsky, Erica McIntosh, Bill Sensio, Catherine Shen, and John Henry Smith. Thanks also to Mackenzie Martin. Marketing support provided by The Podglomerate. Legal review by Lou Levy from the firm Lerman Center, PLLC. Lauren Komrosky is our Chief Digital Officer. Vanessa De La Torre is our Chief Content Officer. Generation Barney is produced with support from PRX and is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation. Special thanks to PRX's Stephanie Quo, our muse and fairy podmother, and also Mike Russo, Grace Abler, and Tony Carlson. To learn more about the podcast, visit ctpublic.org/Barney. I'm Sabrina Herrera. Generation Barney is a production of Connecticut Public.
He was pre-Tickle Me Elmo, and Tickle Me Elmo kind of came out as a response to that Barney Play School plush. So he was before his time.
Hello again to all my friends. Will you make a noise like a cow? Find something black. Try to tiptoe like Baby Bop. Will you make a sound like a sheep?